Knowledge for Men, episode 18. Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, where boys turn into men, where men turn into leaders, into lions, the ferocious few who stand strong, a place where you grow to become the man you were born to be. It's time to take massive action towards the life you want. Get the health, get the relationships, business, and career you've always dreamed of. Achieve a level of success and happiness that you've been searching for so many years. Life has given you enough, and it's time to take a stand and take full control of your life. Stand with us as we interview the most inspiring and successful leaders to give you real-world advice to crush life and awaken the sleeping giant inside of you. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download today at kfmbook.com. There's over 100,000 titles to choose from for your smartphone, tablet, or computer. It's a perfect way to listen to your favorite books in the car, in the gym, or at home. Check out kfmbook.com to start learning in your downtime. All right, guys, I have a very special guest for you guys today. I'm here with Tony Hsieh, an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and the CEO of Zappos.com. In 1999, at the age of 24, Tony sold Link Exchange, the company he co-founded, to Microsoft for $265 million. He then joined Zappos as an advisor and investor, then eventually became CEO, where he helped grow Zappos from almost no sales to over $1 billion in gross merchandise sales, while simultaneously making Fortune magazine's best companies to work for list. In November 2009, Zappos was acquired by Amazon.com in a deal valued at over $1.2 billion. Tony, the listeners just turned up their volume. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's go ahead and kickstart the show with a favorite success quote of yours and why.
So I guess right before this, you were talking about how you had just read my book. And I think I actually used this quote in the beginning of the book, and also 2 days ago just saw The Matrix again. And so in that movie, Morpheus said that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And I guess that's my advice in general to entrepreneurs, and kind of how I've lived my life is not trying to come up with this plan that's perfect and then you know exactly what you're going to do and then execute it on it. But instead, just to use an analogy, just start walking and then see what happens and then just keep adjusting and adapting.
Take action and start your journey. All too often, guys will get caught up with reading books, attending seminars, and being very knowledgeable of business in general, but just never taking that leap. There's never a right time or perfect place to get started. All you can do is begin, learn from your mistakes, and move forward. And now, Tony, I want to jump into your story. How did you get started with what you do? Share with the audience your journey.
I know. I guess I've always been pretty entrepreneurial because growing up, my parents wanted me to get into a good college in order to get into a good grad school or become a doctor, lawyer, or go to med school. And kind of that whole thought of having the first 35 years of my life planned out just didn't really resonate with me. So in some ways, going the entrepreneurial route was kind of my way of rebelling against that. And so I've done anything from the lemonade stand to various attempts at small businesses. And then in 96, co-founded a company called Link Exchange, which you mentioned earlier. Grew that to about 100 or so people and then ended up selling the company to Microsoft in 98. But what a lot of people don't know is the real reason why we ended up selling the company. I co-founded it with my college roommate, Sanjay. And the real reason is just because it ended up not being a fun place to work at anymore, and because we didn't pay enough attention to company culture. And I think we did a decent job in terms of hiring people with the right skill sets and experiences, but we know any better to pay attention to company culture, and not everyone that we hired was good for the culture. Yeah, so by the time we got to 100 people, I myself dreaded getting out of bed in the morning to go to my own company. That led to the sale, and after selling the company, did some investing and invested in a bunch of different internet companies, of which Zappos just happened to be one of them. And then over the course of a year, this was back in, 99, 2000, realized that for me, investing was actually kind of boring. I felt like I was sitting on the sidelines all the time, really missed being a part of building something. So within a year, joined Zappos full time. Been with Zappos ever since. Zappos is going to be 15 years old this year. And then a couple years ago, launched a company called Downtown Project that's focused on helping revitalize downtown Vegas. And that's where we are now.
And you know what? I think that was a key learning lesson in your own personal development, Tony. When you saw the company culture at Link Exchange go bad and you weren't happy about going to work in the morning and it was your own company, I feel like you took those lessons and carried them with you into Zappos, and you would never let that happen again. Well, before we transition into that, after the sale of Link Exchange, you had money and you were investing in multiple different internet companies, and one of them being Zappos. But when did you have that major aha moment where Zappos was the one you wanted to be fully involved in? Especially at this time when selling clothes online was in its infancy, let alone selling shoes.
It was probably more just because it was the most fun and interesting company. I really liked the people there. And with the sale of Link Exchange, we got super lucky with the timing, so it worked out well financially. And I was in the position of actually asking myself, what do I want to do with my life if technically I didn't have to work anymore? And I guess with Zappos, it was the people there. It was something that I would want to do even if I wasn't paid, and I wasn't paid, and so it's really just thinking about what would make me the happiest. And I guess that's kind of how I generally try to live my life rather than just accept so-called conventional wisdom of this is how a company should be run or whatever, really just having it be guided more by, well, what does it have to be that way if that's not necessarily making me or employees or customers or anyone the happiest.
So you asked yourself, what do I want to do with my life if I don't have to work anymore? That's really powerful. I mean, what it comes down to it is happiness, passion, and doing the things that matter to you. And for you, Tony, that was Zappos. And literally, you weren't being paid. In fact, you were paying them to keep them afloat. It was really about following your own intuition of what you felt would make you most happy. And it was clear to you at this time that more money was not going to make you any more happier. In comparison to your first job at Oracle, not that it's a bad company, but for you, that job was clearly not making you happier, even though it was the highest paying job you could get right out of college.
Yeah, so I guess right before Link Exchange, I had worked at Oracle for about 5 months, and it was one of those things where I did it because that's kind of what everyone was doing. After college, you get a job, and so just kind of followed the crowd on that one, and then realized that it wasn't really that exciting for me.
And you made the leap. You quit and started Link Exchange, which was a huge financial success, then went on to grow Zappos into a $1 billion company. You make it sound so easy, but I want to hear some of those challenges because I know after reading your book, Delivering Happiness, you had quite the ups and downs, and none of this was an easy task. Can you share with the audience a failure or challenge you experienced on your journey and how you overcame that?
Yeah, I guess for Zappos, the maybe an easier way to answer it is the biggest category of mistakes that or failures that we've had has always been in hiring. And I think that's actually probably true of any company. If you add up over the past 14, 15 years, the cost of all the bad hires we made and the cost of their bad decisions and then the cost of the bad hires that they in turn made and those bad decisions, it's probably cost the company well over $100 million. And so I think in general, especially with a startup, there's always the tendency to hire quickly because there's so much stuff to get done. And then no one enjoys firing. And so there's kind of human nature tendency to fire slowly. And I guess what we've learned over the years is to try to flip that and actually really take a long time to hire people to make sure that you're hiring the right people. And then if someone's toxic to an organization, managing them out as quickly as possible.
Indeed, toxic employees can spread through a company like a virus and inflict a lot of damage on a company culture, which can ultimately prevent it from being a fun place to work and being surrounded by passionate people who care about the company. Something you personally cherish so much from your previous experiences at Oracle and Link Exchange. So it seems like your past experiences there at Oracle, Link Exchange showed you what to do and what not to do in terms of building a company culture.
Yeah, I guess, for me, it probably stems more from a combination of my college years where I had a bunch of friends that we hung out all the time together in college and that just having those social connections, a lot of people probably experience that in college. And then after college, it kind of slowly goes away with the people that they're around. And so after Link Exchange, I also spent some time throwing parties and thought a lot about how do you get people in a party to flow and collide with each other more often, connect with each other. I would think about things like if there's two bars at a party, maybe shut down the first bar that's near the entrance for the first hour because people will always find the alcohol and then open up that first bar later and then that'll promote circulation in the party. And then just kind of translate that to at Zappos, we're always thinking about how do we get employees to serendipitously run into each other in an office environment. And so applied some of that same or similar thinking to the office environment. And then now focusing on downtown Vegas revitalization, it's kind of the same concept, just at a city level. How do you get people in the community to have these serendipitous encounters, to collide with each other more often, to spark these new friendships and also just strengthen existing social connections. And so I guess in some ways the same concept is just, it's like throwing one big party, I guess.
So you're really interested in creating a high level of collaboration, synergy, and teamwork amongst people, whether it's in college, a party, or in the workplace, because ultimately that's what's going to maximize the experience for everyone and make it a success. And I can see why Zappos is considered one of the best companies to work for. And now you're implementing these strategies at a much higher level in the city of downtown Las Vegas. Can you share with the listeners more about this revitalization project you're working on?
Yeah, so most people, when they think Las Vegas, most tourists anyways, think about the big casinos on the Strip, which, as it turns out, is technically not even in the city of Las Vegas. Or if they know anything about downtown, which is where we're located in the area we're focused on, they usually think of the overhead light show, the old casinos. But there's an area that most tourists don't know about called Fremont East. And I myself didn't even know about it until a few years ago. And it's on the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard on Fremont Street. And it's actually the most community-focused place I've ever lived. And I grew up in the Bay Area, but I've never been to a place where the bar owners hang out in each other's bars just to support each other. And it's almost the complete opposite of what people typically associate with Vegas. There's no gaming, and it's normal to, just like in college, it's normal to walk down the street for a block or two and you'll always run into someone you know. And that's just part of the lifestyle here.
It's really interesting how you have a vision for things that not many other people can see. When I think of downtown Las Vegas, honestly, I think of Fremont Street, old casinos, and a zip line. Yet you see potential for a thriving community in an area that not even a lot of people know about. And taking this same theme and applying it to Zappos, in the late 90s and early 2000s, what did you even see in Zappos? I mean, after reading Delivering Happiness, your book, you were spending millions of dollars of your own money. You even sold your house at a huge loss because you need to keep the company running and make payroll. Why did you believe in Zappos so much and sacrifice the amount you did for Zappos?
Because back around 2000 or so, that was a bad time to try to get investors to invest in internet companies, especially e-commerce companies. But our customers actually never stopped buying from Zappos, and every year in Zappos' history, we've always grown, including in the early days. So faith that the growth would continue. And one of the funny things about growing when you're an e-commerce company that has to hold inventory is cash flow is actually, the faster you grow, the harder cash flow is because you have to buy the inventory beforehand before you can sell it. And so that was one of those things where we had to partner really closely with a lot of our vendor partners. Eventually we got a line of credit from Wells Fargo, and all of those things help support our cash flow needs.
This reminds me of a book from a friend of mine, Greg Reed. In his book, 3 Feet from Gold, he talks about how you have to keep persisting and stay focused and committed to your goal. All too often, people will give up when it's hard because honestly, as you already know, it can be really challenging to work on something for so long and get minimal results, especially when you're trying to maintain that balance between personal and work life. It can be really frustrating. So, Tony, how do you find happiness in business and life?
The simplest philosophy to live by, I would say, is just, whether it's for yourself individually or within the context of business, is just always be true to yourself unapologetically. And the short term, sometimes that's going to mean that it might be a little tougher or painful. For example, if you say there's a position that's really hard to fill and you finally find someone that technically can fill that position, but if they're not a good culture fit, I think most people would know that deep down in their hearts that's not the right person. But a lot of people might still end up hiring that person if that position's been really hard to fill. But if you just go with the be true to yourself and what you stand for, what your business stands for, I think in the long run that usually results in everyone being happier.
And is that the same for your personal life as well?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, I guess the longer you do it and the more consistent you are about it, then people that resonate with your philosophy or your business's philosophy, like eventually they'll find you. And so I think the people that aren't true to themselves are living one world or having one set of thoughts on the inside, but then projecting another image. And I think over time that gets really hard.
Stay true to yourself and you will attract those who genuinely feel the same way, therefore creating more abundance in your professional and personal life. So if you're putting on a fake image, then you will attract the wrong people into your life. So staying true to yourself. And I'm sure there were times maybe when you didn't do this and you had to take a few steps back in your life. Tony, can you share with the audience what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your life?
Three biggest lessons. Well, one, we talked about hiring. I mean, everyone says it, but it's one of those things that I think people have told me that before, and I was like, yeah, I get it. And then you don't really quite understand the importance or gravity of it till you've actually experienced doing the wrong thing. And so along with that, I would say it's not just about the people, but also about the culture and the interconnectedness of the people with each other in an organization. I would say ultimately you're going to know your business or your situation, it could be personal or in business, better than anyone else. And so I think while it's great to get advice from a lot of different people just to get different perspectives, ultimately the decision's up to you and you should feel confident about what you think is the right thing, even if everyone else thinks that's the wrong thing. And that's that kind of sense of self-confidence and belief in your own decisions is something that just takes a long time to learn, because there's been plenty of cases where at Zappos we listen to other people's advice over our own intuition and then learned the hard way that we should have just gone with our own gut.
So hire right. Your team is your company. You've got to get A players on your team. And number two, listen and believe in yourself. You know what's best for you, and you've got to trust that you know what the best decisions are for yourself. And now, Tony, I want to jump into the next section where I ask you questions from the audience. And these are questions that people on social media ask me to ask you. All right. And the first question is from Corey W. He asks, what do you do to stop comparing yourself to other people and their successes?
Yeah, I guess I never really did that in the first place. It was more, I don't know, maybe stop reading articles and watching TV, and then you won't have other people to compare with. Because I guess for me, when I'm wrapped up in a project or a startup, I'm just focusing on, I guess not really focusing on other companies, just focusing on the employees and the customer. And yeah, we've never really thought about competition, I guess. We've always just focused on what will wow our customers and how do we keep taking things to the next level.
So you're less concerned with what other people are doing and more concerned about yourself and your team. What can I do with what I have to get to the next level? That's what matters because it's really all you can control. And on to the next question comes from Zach L. He asked, what is your new definition of success? Obviously, you've reached a high level of financial success. What is your new definition of success for yourself? And after the sale of Zappos, why are you still working there?
Yeah, I guess there's two ways people can view quote unquote success. And one is whether it's from external validation and the other is just whether it's something that you just internally care about. And so for me, I would say at least my definition of success for myself is if you can lose everything that you have and truly be okay with it. And then to answer the question about why am I still at Zappos, actually after the sale, with most acquisitions, there's a retention plan to keep the CEO and the rest of the senior managers on. And I actually specifically told them I did not want it. And actually whatever they were planning on allocating to me, we just spread amongst the other employees. So literally my pay over the last, I guess it's been 4 years since the acquisition, has literally been $36,000 a year with no bonuses, no additional stock options or anything for staying. And so the difference between if I had left Zappos 4 years ago versus now is just 4 times $36,000. And so I guess for me, that's really more way of just making sure that I'm not doing stuff for the money. I'm doing stuff just because it makes me happy. And I guess in a weird way, maybe it gives me a little bit more leverage over Amazon, because what makes me happy is being able to be independent. And so Amazon's acquisition of Zappos was very different from most of their acquisitions, where usually the plan is to integrate the company and so on. Whereas we told them we'd only consider doing the deal if Zappos could remain independent. We can have our own separate culture, brand, and running our business our way, which is different from how they run their business. And so, they remained true to that and kept me happy, I guess.
Wow, $36,000 a year for the last 4 years at Zappos. I think, Tony, you are truly committed to Zappos. That's amazing. I never would have thought that. And on to the next question from my S. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, Tony?
I have no idea. I mean, if you backtrack 10 years ago, Zappos, I hadn't even moved to Vegas yet. And then if you backtrack 4 years ago, the idea of Zappos moving to downtown Vegas and all this downtown revitalization stuff wasn't even on the radar. So I don't know, but I'm also comfortable not knowing. I think that's part of what makes it fun, is just kind of see what falls into place. And then, did you ever watch that TV show MacGyver?
Oh, of course. He would save the world with a safety pin and a shoelace.
Yeah, I love watching that show growing up, and he never knew exactly how you would get out of a bad situation, but he'd figure out how to combine a safety pin and paper towel and a rubber band and make a sailboat and save the world and by the end of each hour. And so it's that combination of creativity and optimism and street smarts that I really liked about MacGyver. And I guess that's what I think is fun about entrepreneurship. It's basically like getting to play MacGyver, but for business. And then one of my favorite quotes is, and I can't remember who said this, it might have been Jim Collins, is that it's never a question of not having enough resources. It's a question of not having enough resourcefulness. And so kind of the path that's gotten me to and Zappos and Downtown Project to where we are today is really just throughout time, stuff happens and we learn stuff, and then you're just always putting together different pieces of the business, which could be the people, the brand, the inventory, whatever, and then you kind of pretend you're MacGyver and just say, oh, what can we build out of this? And then keep doing that over and over again. And so who knows where that will lead 10 years from now.
Tony, you're going to be in space running Zappos. That's the future.
Let's see.
And on to the next question. Just came in, another one from Corey W. What's it like being at the top? Did anything change when you reached a high level of financial success?
I guess I did a bunch of thought experiments along the way, but for me, I've never really been a big purchaser of things anyways. So it's not like after Link Exchange, I suddenly went out and bought 10 cars or anything. I've always been a big believer in paying extra for, if you can use that extra to buy a memorable experience, but that's not really a change in philosophy. Even before Link Exchange, I would do that. And so I guess maybe the one change is now it's very like anything that saves me time or improves the experience or saves stress, that it's easy to just say, oh, well, then we should be willing to pay extra for that. Whereas before, there would probably be at least some level of hesitation, but then I'd always force myself to bite the bullet and have that memory. But I guess I had the budget for that because I didn't really spend money on things.
I remember reading a quote in your book that said, invest in experiences versus in material things. I think that sums up your views quite well. And on to the next question, Kai D asks, how do you handle fear or even your fear of failure?
I guess just by realizing that failing in our world is actually not that big a deal. Like I think anyone listening to this probably some way where, if you couldn't pay rent, you could probably find a friend whose couch you can crash on or figure out how to not starve to death. Whereas, I mean, it's very different from like 20 or 30,000 years ago, where the worst case scenario 30,000 years ago is that you might actually get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or not have shelter. And those cases, that's a very bad outcome. Whereas I guess I think of people that are afraid of failing in business. My advice to them is don't think of it in terms of whether this idea or this business will fail or not, because then they end up usually trying to think about, trying to come up with a perfect plan. And nothing ever turns out the way you planned it anyway. So it's kind of a waste of time anyways. But instead, like what was Malcolm Gladwell's book? I think Outliers, where he talked about become a great piano player or golfer or sculptor. It basically takes 10,000 hours of practice. And I think the same is true for being an entrepreneur. So rather than worry about, is your first idea or second idea going to fail or not, just think of more as you're just racking up your hours and you need to get to 10,000. And if anything, you'll learn more from failing than from not failing, because maybe the reason you didn't fail was complete luck, and you might have learned the wrong lessons if you just happen to always be lucky.
Yeah. I've always said that on the other side of fear is growth. Whenever you take an action, you will either succeed or you'll learn something new to make you more likely to succeed in the future. And on to the next question. It's a little bit different. It's from Kyle B. He says, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Italian Renaissance?
I feel like it's almost a riddle. Teenage Mutant Ninja. Well, I've never really watched either. Is there a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle named Leonardo? Maybe that's the connection.
Yeah, there is.
Well, there you go. Leonardo's the answer.
But there's also Raphael, Donatello. They're all like named after Italian Renaissance guys, artists and painters.
Oh, is he? Oh, are they all? See, this shows I know nothing about the Italian Renaissance. Then.
You did not pay attention in history class. And on to the next question. This is from Alan S. He asks, do you have any advice for a entrepreneur like myself who has read all the books? I attend a lot of seminars, yet I can't seem to find the right business to take action on.
I would say figure out what you're passionate about, and I wouldn't actually worry as much about figuring out the business model or financial model. I would just start doing whatever it is you're passionate about, but do it and fully invest your time and energy into it so that you can be best or have a unique approach to it. And then I think stuff will just evolve over time if you're best or unique at something.
So focus on what you're passionate about, focus on things you care about and have an interest in. If you don't know what you're passionate about, then I suggest just trying new things that you have an interest in and spend less time reading or surfing the internet and more time actually doing something and taking action. And final question coming from Paul J. Have you found people who are wildly financially successful in your network yet seem to be unhappy? Have you seen a correlation there?
Well, I think that in general, there's been research that has shown that more money will buy you more happiness up until you make about $70,000 a year. And then after that, because basically that's what you need in order to not have to worry at all about rent or food or being able to go out to dinner and stuff. And then beyond that level, I think the data show that it was pretty much the same. And then I forget where the cutoff is after that, but somewhere after that, then it actually starts correlating in the opposite direction with happiness, because I think people end up, I would guess a lot of people end up worrying more about how to protect their money and I think mistaken increasing wealth they think increasing wealth will lead to increasing happiness, because that would make sense intuitively, but the research on the science of happiness has shown that's actually not the case. And even if intellectually people know that that's not the case, they probably still don't believe it for themselves or think this time it's different.
Yeah, I've actually seen that article. I think it was going viral on Huffington Post. But what was most interesting to me was that once you earn more than $75,000, then money was no longer going to be a major contributing factor to your overall happiness. And you needed to get your happiness from other sources, but money would not be the main indicator of happiness.
Yeah, what's also interesting is I think the tendency for a lot of people is as they make more money, they should buy a bigger house. And usually that a bigger house translates to a longer commute. And you also, the research shown that for things like a house, it might make you happier in the short term, but after a few months, your mind just adapts and it won't actually make you happier than a smaller house. And then one of the best predictors of how happy someone is actually you look at their commute time. The longer their commute time, the more unhappy they're likely to be.
However, I also read that if you listen to the Knowledge for Men podcast on that commute, then your happiness levels would actually increase. Well, Tony, we've now entered the knowledge round. Are you ready?
Sure.
For you, the listeners of the Knowledge for Men podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their awesome service. And you know what? Something I've noticed after interviewing hundreds of successful people is that they all read a ton of books. If you want to be successful, you've got to educate yourself every day. I don't always have time to sit down and read a book, so I personally recommend listening to audiobooks in your car, in the gym, or on the go. You can pick up for free any one of my favorite best-selling books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The Education of Millionaires by Michael Ellisberg, The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, or any other audiobook you want. Audible has over 100,000 titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to kfmbook.com. Again, that's kfmbook.com for your free audiobook today. Start learning, growing, and becoming the man you want to become now. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. Tony, how would you explain entrepreneurship to a newcomer? Somebody who's just picked up maybe E-Myth or Think and Grow Rich, and you're standing right next to them. What would you say?
Well, I haven't read either of those books, but someone told me about a study they did to look at the difference between entrepreneurs and people that and MBAs, people that go to business school. And I think the study was basically like if you take them into like a random kitchen and ask them to cook something, the MBAs will go find a recipe, look up all the ingredients and the quantities, go shopping, buy those ingredients, and then go follow the directions, step 1 through step 10. Whereas the entrepreneurs will see what's in the refrigerator and in the pantry, and then based on those ingredients, make something new and interesting. And sometimes it'll turn out great, and sometimes it may not.
I'm surprised that you haven't read Think and Grow Rich or E-Myth. Those are big classic books, but I think that really says a lot about you as a person. Like you just take action, like you go after it, and you're not looking for some sort of magic bullet to help you build a business. So are you a big reader?
There's lots of great books out there.
Okay, what are your 3 most influential books and why?
I wouldn't say these are the top 3, just these are the most recent ones or ones that come to mind. Great by Choice by Jim Collins. It's good. Made to Stick. It's about storytelling and tribal leadership. The Tipping Point.
Good choices. And for all the listeners, you can go ahead and pick up one of these books for free if you check out kfmbook.com. That's a partnership with Audible, an Amazon company. And on to the next question. What was holding you back from becoming the successful entrepreneur that you are today when you first started?
I don't know, probably just the expectations of my parents when I was younger, like more trying to go down the path that I was initially expected to go down.
Tony, what's the best advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Great pieces of advice that I still try to live by today are, there's one where someone told me the most important thing in life is the quality of life. And, that kind of goes back to not letting, money be the driver of what you do. And then someone else told me one of the important lessons that they learned in life is to never judge. And, there's always, for each person, they're in their own unique situation, and you don't know all the details of that situation or of what they went through growing up and so on.
Yeah, judging. And this brings up a popular quote from Steve Marabelli. When we are judging everything, we are learning nothing. Very powerful quote there. And moving on to the next question, what's one action one person can take right now that would get them closer towards their dreams?
There's been studies that have shown that whether you're looking at weight or income or lifestyle or whatever, that you're kind of the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So take a look at who hang out with people that you want to be more like or live in that world more.
And Tony, I have a scenario for you. Imagine you woke up and you were 20 again. You have a laptop and $1,000. What would you do?
I think probably try to start some business that has a consumer branding element to it. And I guess in some ways it doesn't really matter what. Like I've never been into shoes, for example, but for me what's fun is what I am passionate about is customer service and company culture. And so for whatever the business is, I think there's always an opportunity to incorporate those elements into it.
You would still do what you're doing today. I love it. And if you had to write your obituary today, what would it say?
It would say, I guess he didn't live forever. I don't know. I guess I don't really, it's not really that important to me, I guess.
Okay, we'll take it. And another deep question for you. What is your philosophy on life?
Yeah, it's a good. I guess I'll just go with what I said earlier. Just be true to yourself, unapologetically.
And Tony, do you have any parting piece of guidance for all the listeners today?
Let's see. Go on more adventures, trips. There's been research that has shown that it's better to take a lot of short trips than one long trip for vacation from a happiness and memory perspective. So pick a weekend this month or next month and go somewhere.
And are there any places that you would recommend, any places that you've been where you had a transformational experience?
It's never really, I guess, so much a place. It's more kind of just unexpected conversation with random people that happen because you happen to be in a random place, not your usual, comfortable, same place that you go to every week or every day.
And as we're coming to a close, just kind of thought of this real quick. Since Zappos is a customer service driven company, can you share with the audience what is the craziest customer service story that you've ever heard of at Zappos?
Well, I think we just had set a new record for longest phone call ever. I want to say it was 10 or 11 hours. I don't know how that.
10, 11 hours. Sounds like your customer service rep turned into a counselor for the customer.
Probably. I don't know all the details.
All right. And that will conclude the knowledge round. Tony, what's exciting you today? What are you currently working on?
Yeah, so there's just a lot of stuff happening in downtown Vegas with all the revitalization stuff going on. A shipping container park just opened up downtown. That's really cool. And we have something called the Inspire Theater that's opening up. And the cool thing is, like, it seems like every week or so there's a new grand opening of something here now. So pretty fun place to live.
What's your vision for the future of Zappos? And ultimately, what's the vision for the Las Vegas downtown project?
I have no idea, but I think that's part of the fun, is just seeing how it's going to unfold over time.
And Tony, that'll conclude the interview. Thank you so much for being on the show and imparting such invaluable wisdom with the audience. Tony, thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's going to wrap up episode 18. And all I can say is, wow, 18 episodes in, and I just interviewed such an amazing entrepreneur and best-selling author, Tony Hsieh. I never would have thought that when I first started a podcast that I would get such amazing people on this podcast. I didn't think about how, if, but I just started. I took the first step and kept walking. Yeah, I made some mistakes. The first few episodes don't sound too great, and I was really nervous on the mic. But I didn't let that stop me from just achieving what I wanted. I didn't hesitate. I didn't just get stuck in with whether or not I should take action or if it's not perfect. I just put it out and I kept moving. I kept going. I kept climbing the ladder. Just take action, you guys. I'm telling you, don't just listen to this podcast. Implement what you're learning every day. And I promise you can watch the quality of your life soar. Guys, I'm happy to announce that today, the Knowledge for Men podcast just surpassed 100,000 downloads. Overall, this podcast was recently ranked number 27 of all the podcasts on iTunes, above 60 Minutes, ESPN, and NBC News. Man, I'm right next to NPR and even Joe Rogan on certain days. This has been such an amazing journey, and I want to thank all of you guys for listening to this show. Just keep listening to the show, and I'll keep grinding every day, every hour, 7 days a week to ensure I provide a high-quality podcast with rich, high-quality content that will deliver what it says it will do. Help you live better in all areas of life: health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth. I hope you're as excited as I am about 2014 because it's going to be a wild ride. Let's go. Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you be a part of a thriving community of men who want to crush it in all aspects of life. I'm on a mission here to inspire millions of guys, and with your help, we're going to make a dent in the universe. Check out knowledgeformen.com for a ton of free content that's designed to help you live a remarkable life. Again, that's knowledgeformen.com. I hope to see you there. And always remember, 2014 is the official year of the crush, where we take action to get the life we've always dreamed of. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and until next time, let's do it.